that's very admirable, to see someone taking pride in stepping up to the challenge of fatherhood, and the challenges every generation is different. With you raising a child in this generation who is biracial, how will you address him growing up in a world where you have, a percentage of white America who may say the racial, equality gap, is not as bad as it is. And then you have a percentage of Black America who says it's not as good as it is. Like, how would you address that, with him, for him to have an understanding?
What a tough first question, man. You're coming out the blocks, bro.
My apologies.
Man, I thought you was gonna ease me into this thing, man. It's funny you asked that. Those of you that's kind of seen what my son looks like, he's gonna be probably a little bit maybe towards the darker side. So on first impression, it's gonna look like an African American. That's what I mean by that. And so based off of like breaking generational curses and really thinking this whole thing through, because this is a question I've thought about heavily, is the one thing I don't want to do is create the narrative of what it's going to look like for his generation. And I think that's something that my parents, of course, out of love and, also a little bit of fear, like started me early. I mean, as early as like 5 or 6, like telling me kind of what this world looked like for an African American, like some of the injustices that you're going to face. This is just the way it is, preparing me in hopes of so that I can survive, right? But I feel like in that process, they passed on a lot of fear and experiences from their generation. And their generation had a lot rougher, right? Of course, like you saw it, you see people hanging from trees and getting blasted by fire hoses, and it was a lot crazier back then with that. But I felt like they passed on that fear and that paranoia. And I think I was talking to somebody else. Black men in America are traumatized 3 times with this whole social injustice. The first is through your parents already creating that narrative of what the world's going to look like. Second, once it actually happens to you. And third, once you see it on TV. Because now that's you happening again. You're getting traumatized 3 times. Right. And I want to break that cycle for my son by not giving him that first level of trauma. I don't want to traumatize him and be like, hey man, this is what it's going to look like. You're going to get treated differently here and here and here and here and here, and kind of pre-paving the way he's going to see the world. You know what I'm saying? Like to me, that's traumatizing him.
Gotcha.
Like his world might look a lot better than mine. His experience might be a lot better than my experience, but why pre-pave a experience that might completely different? Knowing that how active, especially right now in this times, people are working towards a better day.
Well, what question?
To me, that negates their work.
Right. That being said, I just want to real quick, like, you don't want to like put that already in his mind and take that first step away. How do you two at the same time find a balance of preparing for the world? Because even if you don't put that image in, it's still the world is going to.
Great question. A great question. So instead of, to me, making it about race, just making it about injustice, period. Like this is how you face adversity. This is how, when adversity is in front of you, son, this is how we go about it. But not making it so specific, saying that, it's going to be, because he's going to have other injustices. There's other injustices besides social injustice.
I wasn't even thinking race. I was like, how are you going to just prepare him for adversity?
Exactly.
Period.
Exactly. And just, the great thing about sports is that I think that's a big lesson that they teach, so definitely having my son in sports. And I really want him, now that I work with some MMA fighters, I really want him to wrestle. Because wrestling, from a mental standpoint, teaches you how to deal with all type of situations and how to remain calm. Okay. Like when you're getting choked out, you can't get super nervous or anxious, because you got about 90 seconds until you're out. So you have to be able to start to control your own physiology during that time, even though you're facing injustice, and then figure out a way out. And so like, I really want him to do that, and it teaches you how to regulate your emotions and how to just navigate a intense situation. Yeah.
That's deep. That's deep. I never looked at wrestling that way, but now that you broke it down,
right?
You know, that sounds like a great pitch. I feel like a lot of high school wrestling coaches should probably bring you in for you to talk to, you know, some of the people.
I think we all should be doing something as a practice to help us with that.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. If not, life becomes the practice. And I want to be able to have the skill set to face life and not use life as my practice. I rather have a practice for that. So when life does throw me those things, I know how to navigate.
That's deep. Not to use life as practice. That's
that makes sense.
Right. Like life is game time. I would already have the skills and done practice already so I can perform well in the game.